The anime begins amidst utter chaos, on a battlefield littered with fallen bodies. We are introduced to Lufa's Mafahal, who is about to be defeated by a group of people. However, she responds that it will be their end, grabs one by the face, and smashes his face against several rocks, smashing his head against the mountain. An enemy fires with a bow and arrow, but she manages to block it. Suddenly, a wolf appears before her and strikes, but Lufa easily blocks it and counterattacks with an impressive flurry of attacks, knocking the animal away. Even after defeating several opponents, others continue to appear. She takes a blow to the face and is thrown away, but quickly reverses the situation, throwing the man against the rocks. Then, several weapons appear behind her and are fired at her, but Lufa manages to dodge them. Another hero appears behind her and hits her with a punch, but she realizes it's just water, the result of the protection of a wizard assisting his companions. As she receives the attack, she pierces the man's chest, but he claims he's not finished yet. She is surprised to realize he has a climax ability. As she tries to pull her arm from the enemy's body, he grabs her and, along with his allies, manages to pin her to the ground. Lufa, however, begins to laugh at the situation. After being defeated, she admits that perhaps they are all capable of defeating the Demon Lord. The scene then cuts to a young man at the computer, realizing that his Lufas resisted until the end. On the forum, players praise the game highly. Suddenly, the goddess of creation, Alovinus, appears. The young man recognizes that she is the goddess responsible for creating the world of Engate and wonders if this is an official message from the company. At this point, Lufa is already as important a boss as the Demon King himself. The boy had reached a level impossible for even the developer to ignore. Unable to understand what his role would be, he decides to accept. Upon waking, confused, he notices several people in front of him and believes he's being pranked. Looking down, he notices he's transformed into the character from his favorite game. With a body full of delicate feminine features, he always thought that if he were a girl, he'd want to be beautiful, which is why he created his character that way. Now, he wonders if he's dreaming or if he's actually entered the game. When he tries to speak to others, simply raising his voice causes them all to fall to the ground. Due to the crushing pressure of his racial ability, Persevere tries to control this intimidation, but even after some time, people still suffer its effects. Finally, he manages to defuse the situation. Although the tension remains, those present begin to fear her, but Hufflepuff simply wants to understand how she ended up there. An elf, however, faints before her. He soon discovers that 200 years have passed since she was sealed. The Demon King still lives, and to defeat him, they tried to summon a hero through the hitch, but it was she who emerged. The boy then realizes he's actually inside the game, now playing a girl. Despite his surprise, he feels joy at being able to live in the world he loved so much. However, he understands that the priority isn't acting like a fan, but deciding what to do in this new reality. Seeing everyone in shock, he decides to leave immediately. She explains that she has no intention of interfering in the world. Despite her defeat, the battle brought her satisfaction. She is no longer Hufflepuff the Conqueror, but a young woman whose hopes have been dashed. When asked where she would go, she replies only that she wants to see the current world and appreciate its form. She asks them to forget about her and suggests they perform another hero summoning. As she takes flight, she marvels at the sensation of wearing real wings and contemplates the world of Engate Online from a new perspective. For any gamer, there is nothing more fun than exploring their favorite game as their own creation. As he advances, he spots something gigantic and realizes it still exists. You now know where to go first. It is then explained Thattenline Hookiepies set in the world of Misgars, a medieval fantasy online RPG. Its biggest draw is the war system, a PvP in which players represent nations and the victors conquer the defeated. Another major highlight is the narrative, which adapts the player's actions to the game's official story. He had transformed Lufa into the strongest character. He leveled up, acquired items, and remained the best player. For the first time in history, he managed to unify Misgars, which was widely celebrated in the narrative, making Lufa a semi-official character. However, a game with only one powerful ruler would end up being boring. So, he and other high-level players divided their forces between the Conqueror's army, Lufa's, and the Light's army, made up of heroes. They then organized the greatest battle ever recorded, bypassing even the official final boss. In the end, Lufa's was defeated and sealed in subspace. Now, back in the world, she contemplates her base, the Mafahel Tower of Heaven. Upon entering, she realizes it's not as well preserved as she imagined, but its essence remains. She feels nostalgic as she remembers when her friends would gather there to talk, drink, and have fun. Suddenly, Dina appears, a girl who has waited 200 years for Lufa's return. When questioned, she introduces herself as the advisor. The player remembers creating her as a simple scenario NPC, tasked with being Lufa's advisor, and is shocked to realize she has gained consciousness and waited all this time. Lufa's apologizes for forgetting her and promises not to repeat the mistake. She explains that she was summoned by humans, and Dina imagines they must have been shocked. She then reveals that, to the west, lies the nation of Levitane, which had prepared to summon a hero. Lufa's asks for more details about what happened after her departure. She discovers that the heroes who defeated her became known as the Seven Heroes, each founding their own nation. Of the seven, 4 have already died of old age, leaving only 3 remaining, belonging to long-lived races. She asks if they would also be players, but Dina explains that the Demon King is still alive and has defeated the 7 heroes. U-12 stars still exist. Officially Khalid 12 celestial stars of conquest were extremely rare monsters that Lufa's managed to recruit, granting the 12 most powerful this prestigious title. At the time, I thought an important leader should have something like the classic 4 generals. I'd like to know how they are doing. The girl knows the whereabouts of 6. Of these, 2 joined the Demon King's army to seek revenge against the humans who defeated her. Lufa's knows her choice led everything to this, but she considers it quite a regrettable decision. They must be given a strong warning. Hufflepuff finds all this quite amusing and needs to see the current state of the world for himself. He also needs to verify whether the 3 heroes are players like himself. So, Hufflepuff decides to set out on a journey to gather the 12 stars. Stopping those acting foolishly is his responsibility. Dina locates and informs them that the closest one to them is Svel. One of the 7 heroes is also located there. Ares has tried several times to invade Svel and continues to do so to this day. Hufflepuff already knows where he should go, but the girl asks him to wait a bit, as they don't have a penny. Hufflepuff decides to go anyway, but she insists he not do it carelessly, as many people know his face. So, Hufflepuff dons a hood so he can walk around town, but still attract attention. Looking inside the guild, they both stare, and Lufa's remembers when he founded that nation. Looking at the quests, Dina suggests looking for cats, but Lufa's refuses, as he's not good at that kind of task. Just ahead, he notices the presence of orcs. It's explained that, when defeated, these creatures have a 3% chance of dropping an item that increases maximum HP. Upon entering the forest, Lufa's notices a group of orcs standing right at the entrance. She creates a sword and destroys them with ease. However, she is surrounded by several orcs, but she still eliminates them all effortlessly, cutting off their heads as if they were nothing. The orc leader becomes enraged and launches several blows, but Lufa's dodges them all and appears before him. Simply by touching the monster, she manages to destroy its head, leaving Dina in shock. After some time, Dina was skinning the orcs with precision. While cutting one of them, the blue-haired girl, full of energy, told Lufa's they were lucky with those enemies. She asked him to look at the orcs' backs. She explained that if he killed one without damaging its back, he could absorb all their vitality, increasing the health of whoever consumed that part. Lufa's, in his thoughts, wondered if she was referring to the item that increased maximum life. Even so, Dina continued detailing that orcs could appear anywhere, but only 3% would have intact backs. Faced with that, Lufa's declared that from that moment on, he would eliminate the orcs without touching their backs. Dina then commented that she would cook the meat later for consumption and asked him to leave it to her. Suddenly, portals appeared on the ground, sucking the orcs in immediately. Lufa's asked what she had just witnessed. Dina explained that it was teleportation magic, which would take the bodies to the tower to turn them into dried meat. Before that, she suggested they free the women kidnapped by the orcs. After some time, they completed the rescue of the prisoners. Dina approached Lufas and commented that the orcs had not defiled anyone, almost as if they cared. The protagonist, unsurprised, commented that it was expected. After all, orcs were gentlemen. She thought to herself that, according to the game's story, they always took care of women to gain their affection. Something apparently still true in that world. Even knowing this, Dina found it hard to accept such chivalry. Lufas noticed that, even so, the women were frightened, something Dina realized suddenly. Her expression changed, and she concluded that humans and orcs could never live in harmony. Then she exclaimed, "Transmute." A gigantic fist emerged from the ground, which she called Rognir's right arm. With it, she destroyed the orcs' den, ensuring there were no survivors. Afterward, she asked if Lufas wanted her to erase the women's memories. He questioned if that was necessary, and Dina, with a stern expression, confirmed it. Moreover, she could implant false memories and personalities. But Lufas was relieved to know they would not need to go that far this time. Dina agreed and suggested they return immediately to the village. They transported themselves in a huge stone golem, accompanied by the rescued women. The protagonist asked Dina why no one had dealt with the orcs and why they were so simple-minded. The blue-haired girl said perhaps there was no incentive, mentioning that combat level had dropped greatly over the last 200 years. Lufas asked what that meant. Dina used the kingdom that had brought her back as an example, asking if she knew the level of the best swordsman. Lufas replied that it was probably around hers, but Dina clarified that it was level 120. Surprised, Lufas asked if she was joking, for it seemed very low, since she remembered that in the game there were people at level 1000. Dina explained that this was not the case there. Her time had been unusual. She recalled that people live only once, and few monsters reach level 1000 without losing lives. For that, one would have to fight tirelessly every day, something unimaginable. She considered that era, with so many high-level heroes, true madness. Lufas realized they were not in the game but corrected herself, thinking that world was very different from what they knew. Thus, she reflected on the entire journey. Upon arriving at the village and delivering the women safe, the local chief offered the reward. When they were about to leave, the chief asked Lufas if she wanted to leave the stone golem for protection. She confirmed, explaining that it would serve in case the orcs returned. While saying farewell, a villager asked at least to tell her name. The protagonist was about to answer, but Dina interrupted, declaring that her name would be as follows. Irritated, the protagonist stepped on Dina's foot. Offended, Dina demanded an explanation, but the girl complained about being called Falu. Dina insisted that she could not use her true name freely and gave her a pseudonym. Lufas kept complaining, and Dina silenced her, asking that they move on to the panel exchange. Inside a carriage, they talked about the new amount of money, enough to go to Esbel. While Lufas was thinking, she reflected that she needed to stop one of the 12 stars, Ares, the ram, who was invading Esbel. In a brief scene, the beast was seen standing in the middle of a lake. Returning to the protagonist, she mentioned that she needed to check the presence of other players, possibly one of the 3 heroes surviving the conflict. She planned to start with Megars. Then they crossed a forest full of mana and soon saw the waters of Esbel. At the entrance, the guards requested passes, which worried the protagonist, but Dina handled it, and they entered. Inside the city, Dina explained that it was Belizgo, founded by one of the heroes. The elf Megars, known as the Wise King, emphasized that the country was unique due to its abundant mana, focusing on schools of magic and knowledge. Anyone wishing to become a mage or scholar gathered there. Lufas asked if that was why the lake emitted light. Dina confirmed and asked if the mana affected her body, since salty beings did not enjoy it. The protagonist replied that she did not know the opinion of other salty beings but found it pleasant and refreshing. She then mentioned that they would go see Megars for some questions, which worried Dina, who asked if she planned to invade the castle. Lufas denied it, recalling that Ares was already causing trouble, so she preferred not to worsen things. However, prioritizing knowledge and information from the last 200 years, she suggested going to the library. They asked a bald man named Gans, a mercenary, who pointed to the east side of the city and offered to guide them. Realizing they were newcomers, Dina introduced them to him and to Lufas. Along the way, they observed the liveliness of the place. Gans confirmed, mentioning that few people sat there nowadays, since Ares, one of the 12 stars, attacked relentlessly. Seeing Lufas worried, he reassured her, explaining that the lake around the city was a water golem created by Megars through alchemy, ensuring safety against Ares. Lufas checked and confirmed it was true. Upon reaching a certain point, Gans explained that they would need to take the monorail to reach the east zone of the city. With that, both bid farewell to the kind man. Lufas recognized that he truly was a trustworthy person. Observing his attributes and realizing he was at level 82, she commented that, although low for her, he should be quite strong among modern humans. Thus, we finally see them arriving at the library. Inside, Lufas began exploring the sections, analyzing books about the arrival of demons, the rise of the Miskars, and also about the secrets of the 7 races. Among so many works, she selected 3. One narrated the glory and madness of the 7 heroes, another dealt with the rise and fall of humanity, and finally, one titled, Let's Kill the 7 Heroes, The Great Mistake of Humanity. She remarked that, since the country had been founded by Megars, one of the 7 heroes, critical books could be marked as treason. Dina clarified that Megars was not oppressive and, with a slightly mocking tone, asked if Lufas was surprised, reminding her that she was no longer seen as a hated figure. Lufas explained that she imagined she would be treated as a villain for invading those lands. The light-haired girl confirmed that some books portrayed her that way. However, fear had faded with time, and currently, some people believed that no one would fear demons even if she ruled. In other words, respect for her had grown. She added that she had never created a tyrannical government. In fact, her reign was considered superior to that of many contemporary monarchs. Lufas's face changed positively upon hearing this and suggested they begin reading. 2 centuries ago, Lufas Maffel appeared as a winged being, unifying the world in days. Her power was absolute, but she did not behave as a tyrant. She overthrew corrupt kings and saved many peoples from oppression. However, humanity refused her rule and set itself free. That freedom brought terrible consequences. Demonic beings, who only feared Lufas and the 12 celestial bodies under her command, took advantage of her absence to attack. The 7 heroes tried to contain them, but were defeated. Currently, humans live in ever smaller territories, and the world faces constant danger of ruin. Lufas realized that much research was still needed to remedy the situation. Understanding that the planet was on the verge of collapse, she also knew that the Demon King remained alive, which was why heroes were summoned. However, she was unaware that humans lived increasingly isolated. Though she suspected it due to the country's small size, she had not noticed before because she was simply enjoying herself. But now the danger was real. Armed with this information, they left the library and headed toward Ares' castle when a devastating tremor shook the city, destroying several homes. Lufas estimated magnitude 6, but the destruction did not go unnoticed. Gan seemed concerned, yet all mercenaries were summoned to the border. Lufas asked Dina about the frequency of earthquakes, and she replied that they almost never occurred. That led Lufas to conclude that Ares had control over them, assuming it was her doing, though others also suspected. Dina confirmed, perceiving mana flowing toward the volcano. I suggested using the monorail, but Lufas had a better idea: to transmute a stone into the shape of a bird. Dina held on tightly, and together they departed. However, something felt wrong. Ares was a multicolored sheep, peaceful and harmless. Questioning why they were attacked, assuming they had been defeated by the heroes, unknown memories arose, and we observe an army of monsters led by a sinister sheep. We then see a past where a sheep cried alone in the forest until it found what seemed to be Lufas. This multicolored sheep was legendary, born every 500 years. Surprised by the creature, the observer tried to understand its sorrow, imagining it suffered from attacks by humans and monsters. Its wool was more valuable than gold. Seeing it walk away, she asked about the meaning of its crying. If it lamented its weakness, it should face enemies. Since it did not stop crying, it was instructed to keep doing so for the rest of its life. The sheep then looked at her and bit her. Observing the reaction, it was invited to join the woman to gain strength and rule the world. When asked its name and discovering it had none, she named it Ares. In the present, all mercenaries gathered for the final battle. Johnny asked Gan if that was Ares' ultimate offensive. Confirming, the troops took their positions. Johnny could not believe he would need to fight until the arrival of the main forces. Gan interpreted the earthquake as a declaration of war, adding that Lufas had ordered an attack after declaring war. A knight announced that everything was ready and instructed the mages to eliminate as many enemies as possible. As they advanced, archers managed to eliminate several, but they still had to hold out until reinforcements arrived. Gan led the front line, striking down all who approached. Seeing Johnny about to be attacked, he dispatched the monster swiftly. Johnny wanted to thank him but delayed, as many enemies continued advancing. Many knights fell, and Gan questioned where the others were and how long they could endure. When the situation seemed desperate, Meggers allowed Levia to enter the field, repelling all monsters in the area. Johnny, surprised, rejoiced, wondering if the divinity had intervened. Meggers congratulated the soldiers, informing them that Levia and he would protect the country. Thus, the divinity defeated most of the enemies with ease. Dina highlighted the fear it instilled and commented to Lufas that she probably would not need to intervene. Lufas understood and was pleased, happy to see Gan safe. Dina stated that Levia would have no problem against Ares, whose fire element placed him at a disadvantage. Lufas decided to check the elf's statistics, thinking she should not be able to see them. Surprisingly, she could, discovering he was at level 500 and bore the mark of the fallen. Dina understood that Meggers had unusual status. The light-haired girl observed that the rumors were true. The 7 heroes had been cursed after their defeat by the Demon King, limiting their power by half. Considering that, Dina commented she would not be able to create a very strong golem. In summary, Levia was the last line of defense of Espel. At that moment, Ares appeared and Levia attacked immediately. For an instant, it seemed she had the advantage, until Ares launched a powerful fireball which, though it seemed to miss, actually targeted Meggers. Levia quickly used her body as a shield, and when Ares was repelled, Meggers shouted "Wave," creating a gigantic wave that flooded the entire area. Ares, however, rose into the air, forming layers of fire, advancing to attack Meggers. The latter protected himself by raising a barrier, but when it was about to give way, Levia appeared, stopping Ares. The knights, watching from afar, confidently commented that they could win, with which Lufas agreed. However, he pointed out that Levia's maximum health had been greatly reduced, and therefore she would end up losing. He also added that Ares' plan was not to win, only to pretend his attack to weaken Levia. Observing the monsters, he emphasized that, being very weak, they served only as bait. With all this, he reinforced that Ares was extremely cunning, something Dina confirmed, reminding him that she herself had planned everything that way. Setting that aside, the ram broke free from Levia. Lufas realized that if Levia continued weakening, they would be in danger. With these words, she held Dina's hand and jumped directly toward Ares. During the fall, Lufas reflected on how bad she felt fighting against her servant. Despite all the work done, she apologized to Ares, shouting that she had not sought revenge, and then kicked him so hard that he could crash into several mountains. All the knights saw Lufas, who said to the wise king that she seemed to be suffering. Albeola recognized her power and asked who he was, but decided to answer only when no one was looking. Meggers recognized the voice and the way of speaking, unable to believe it was her. Lufas said she would take care of Ares and ordered Dina to continue with the teleportation. Before leaving, the elf warned that someone was manipulating Ares' thirst for revenge. If it was who he thought, he doubted she needed warning, but asked for caution. Lufas thanked him for the warning from an old friend and flew away, leaving Dina dizzy and Gans curious about her identity. Meanwhile, the sheep rose and, seeing Lufas before her, asked who she was. The protagonist was surprised, since before it only bleated, promising to answer what it sought, showing great power in the room. Ares changed expression upon recognizing that pressure, referring to Lufas as you. She asked if he doubted what he saw or if he did not believe it was someone like her. Ares could not believe it. Convinced that his lady Lufas was dead, he imagined he was deceived. Dispersing his power, he replied, "No way." Although he did not know if she was still the same Lufas, she was definitely Lufas Maffel. There was no mistake or illusion. It was confirmation before his eyes. Cracking her neck and making a subtle gesture with her fingers, she encouraged him to attack, wanting to see how much he had evolved after 200 years. At the same time, she realized that before her stood the true one. Ares advanced, surrounded by fire, letting out a roar. Lufas admitted feeling excited, eager for a real fight after arriving in that world. With a smile, she ordered him to attack. Ares launched his attack furiously, and Lufas managed to stop it with only her hand, pointing out that he was still the same as 200 years ago. Adorable. Strangely, she said she would hug him, but threw him to the sky and then commented that she would pet him. She petted him, and with a few blows threw him forcefully to the ground. Despite the intense battle, the creature stood up and, displaying his most powerful fire, charged at Lufas, who, smiling sadistically, shouted that she would show her power. The impact created an explosion that even stunned the elf Ongrenate. When the smoke cleared, the protagonist saw Ares, previously crying, now stronger. With her fingers, she threw him to the ground again, asking if he still had doubts. About to fall once more, Ares turned into a little girl, hugging Lufas in tears and apologizing. Lufas was surprised, asking if it was Ares, for she knew she could take human form but never imagined it like that. She tried to calm her, asking if she still cried so much after 200 years. Ares apologized, but Luf knew she did it out of care, so she also apologized. Shortly after, Dina arrived through a portal. Luf, analyzing statistics, realized that the girl was not at the same level as in the game, but had evolved, showing effort over the past 200 years. The protagonist bowed, signaling that it was the first stop in the quest to recover the 12 stars. Spreading her wings, she asked Ares to join without question, without accepting excuses. Ares, feeling like a little lamb, happily accepted, glad to be number one. The little girl, writing to Dina, expressed happiness to meet her, surprising her. She quickly approached and asked if she did not remember the Maffel Tower, urging her to try. Ares recognized her as the girl always in the background, admiring her ability to move. Dina, offended, asked if she thought she was movable. The girl did not stop, also amazed that she could speak. Dina answered the same but complained to her mother, as the girl said cruel things, and began to cry. Lufas noticed and asked Ares not to bother her. The girl explained that she was not bothering, only expressing what she thought, which to Dina was worse. Returning to the main subject, Lufas wants to ask Ares the reason behind the invasion of Espel. The sheep lowers his head for a moment and, with furious eyes, tells her that it was impossible to forgive the humans who betrayed them. Since even though Lufas wished to free the world from the fear of demons, humanity interfered and ruined her efforts. She believes that if Lufas had remained alive, the world would be at peace. But now people only worship those traitors called heroes. Ares couldn't bear it, nor could she forgive them. To her, Lufas was a great support, for if not for her, he would no longer be alive. At that moment, Lufas confirms the deep devotion Ares has for her, then approaches, gently caressing his head and asking him to calm down a bit. With that, she recalls what the king said about manipulating the sheep. So she asks him again if that was the only reason for carrying out the invasion. Lufas realizes that Ares knows something more, and it becomes clear that revenge was not his true motive. However, she is pleased to know that he became so strong only to avenge her, and for that reason, she will not forgive those who manipulated his feelings. She asks again who deceived him. Ares needs great courage to say it. However, at that moment, the scene changes, now taking us to Kale Volcano. There, a demon mentions that Levia has grown quite weak and that they will finally be able to conquer her. Standing tall, we see a massive army of monsters. Each one is elite, above level 80, fully prepared, as he gives them a speech and orders them to march to Espel and kill every human they find. Laughing, he raises his hands to the sky, invoking the name of God and proclaiming that they will eliminate another of the foolish heroes who stood against him. He says it was worth spending so many years feeding Ares' thirst for revenge, confessing that they used one of the 12 stars to corner their own allies, shouting that it was a marvelous plan. But then, lightning strikes behind him, leaving all the monsters wounded and a massive crater in the ground. The demon, seeing this, wonders what happened. Looking down, we see the cause, and who else but Ares and Lufas. The demon does not recognize the latter and asks who she might be. Lufas asks if that is the one who manipulated him, which Ares confirms. The demon realizes she is far too powerful for him, asking if she could be one of the 7 heroes, though it's clear she is not. He immediately descends to where they stand. Upon seeing him, Lufas describes his blue skin and inverted colored eyes, unmistakably demonic. He admits it's true and demands from Ares what all this means and what became of her hatred toward humans. He reminds her that her goal was to avenge her betrayed mistress along with all of Espel. Angrily, the sheep calls him Mart and says he still cannot forgive humans, vowing to pursue the 7 heroes throughout his life, even unto death. However, the one who will rejoice most in his vengeance will not be his mistress, but those who manipulated him, the demons. At that, Mart laughs at her final words. Ares tells him that his acts of vengeance were never his mistress's true wish, nor what she would have wanted him to do. He admits he has always known that, but this time he will not hesitate and will stop him right there. That catches Mart's attention. He says so that's how it will be, though he knew this day would come. After all, he could have destroyed Espel at any moment, but hesitated for many years. He tells her she was his best weapon against Levia and that she already fulfilled her purpose. Clenching his fist, he warns her not to think they will let her live after such betrayal. With maniacal laughter, he hurls himself to the ground and draws his weapons, saying he will deal with her personally, releasing an immense wave of energy. Lufas confronts him and tells Ares she will handle it. Ares tries to stop her, reminding her she still hasn't recovered from the wounds of their battle. But Lufas orders her to fall back. Mart again asks who she truly is, astonished to see someone with such abilities in this world. Yet this will be her end, and she will regret ever stepping foot in the volcano. We see Mart's body begin to radiate a colorful aura as he tells her to watch closely. This is Mart's secret art, the ice and fire demon of the 7 luminaries, and he shouts aloud, "Infernal blades of the frozen spectral hell." The aura expands, releasing great energy that whirls the winds around. Mart shows her his weapons, saying these are the twin swords that represent him. In his right hand, he holds an infernal blade wrapped in the fire of the same chaotic swords, and in his left, an icy blade wreathed in the frost of Leviathan's axe. With both swords, he reduces to ashes all that he desires to cut, instantly charging toward her, vanishing and reappearing behind her, moving at blinding speed. Mart shows his blades again, declaring that his precious slashes represent the fates that will claim her life. One will paralyze her, and she will see the Reaper as she dies, clarifying that these flames burn everything to nothing. But she shouldn't fear them, for he is kind enough to make her suffering brief, and she should thank him, saying, "Thank you for saving me from this pain. It will be an honor for you to end my life." Appearing behind her, he shouts that the show is over, but in a blink, Lufas tells him to shut up, and we see her fist about to smash into his face, striking him with such force that the ice shatters, the fire vanishes, and his face is restored in the process. Mart can't believe this is possible, but then he recognizes her black wings and blonde hair. Along with that murderous gaze, he flies into the sky, unable to believe it's truly her. Afterward, Lufas sadly remarks that he was far too weak, and if he really was the mastermind Meggers mentioned. Ares approaches and tells her it was amazing. Lufas then asks about the 7 luminaries he mentioned. The sheep explains that Mart was the one of fire, but then Dina arrives to continue the explanation. The luminaries are the 7 great demon generals created 80 years ago. They are the strongest and most skilled demons, second only to the Demon King and his son. But to Lufas, it's strange, since he doesn't even reach level 300. However, this shows the decline of the demons, because even though the Demon King defeated humanity, he also lost most of his best men. If not for that, the world would have ended long ago, which, for Lufas, means that only the Demon King and the 12 celestial stars can rival him. At that point, Ares mentions that she didn't kill any of the monsters. Lufas agrees, since they were only being manipulated, but as they can't just leave them there, Lufas decides to use capture on all of them, turning them into her subordinates, though she obviously won't take them with her. She then orders them to return to their habitat. They will not attack people without a good reason. Finally, they all leave, and with everything resolved, the sun shines once more upon the volcano. Back in the capital, Lufas informs Meggers that she has recovered Ares, who stands behind her, and that in the process she defeated the luminary of Mart. The elf feels both relieved and astonished, for he had suffered greatly because of them. He asks what happened to the monsters, and she replies that they are under her control now, and will cause no further trouble. With that, the king confirms who she truly is and asks her to accompany him so they can speak in private. Now, Lufas tells us that Meggers is one of the best who used to mess around with him, and that they once went hunting and talked about a lot of nonsense. But he wonders if this is the same Meggers. After that, we see the man happy to see his majesty again, since he had left them worried when they saw him go out to fight Ares. However, he asks him to be much more careful next time, as both he and Levia are irreplaceable for the nation. On the other hand, Dina mentions that they don't seem to care much about Meggers, and Lufas comments that they only care about their own lives. The king continues on his way while the nobles express their joy at seeing him safe. In the corridor, Meggers asks Lufas if she doesn't find what's happening terrible, since the upper ranks of the country should be defending their people. However, they only care about themselves and doing favors for one another. Lufas asks if that was what he wanted to show her, to which he replies that's exactly why he wanted her to see her mistake when coming to the office without anyone watching, and asks her to show her face. Lufas agrees. Removing her hood, Meggers says again that he already knew it was her. But when Lufas is about to greet him as an old friend, she notices a worried expression on the king's face. Lufas is stunned and mentions that she's no longer the player, asking if he also looks at her that way. She comments that he doesn't seem to be the Meggers she once knew, assuming she's still alone in this world. The king tells her that people change and can become stronger or weaker over more than 200 years. He weakened not only in body but also in mind. He also asks why she returned precisely now, and if she came to see how far they had fallen. Lufas comments that it was mere coincidence, and that she was summoned by mistake by those who tried to summon a hero. After a moment of silence, the king says he understands. Lufas wonders again what's going on with the Meggers of this world, since it would be logical for him to confront her upon seeing his nemesis return to life. However, she understands something. She tells the king that she was in the country's libraries, where she read that many books criticize the 7 heroes. She also asks if it was he who brought them here, since he seems to prefer insults and disdain over respect. He asks if she feels guilty that the demons invaded them after he defeated them. Lufas confirms this, seeing Meggers' expression. The latter confesses that he can't stand the admiration of others and that his mistakes torment him, which is why he prefers disdain. Lufas calmly tells him that he hasn't changed. If he won, he should feel proud and move forward as the Meggers she knew. She then asks if he doesn't feel resentment for having betrayed her 200 years ago, when she was about to achieve her dream. Lufas answers that she doesn't feel hatred, since they only rebelled against her because she wasn't a good leader. Therefore, she has no reason to hate. Meggers tries to reply. However, Lufas interrupts him with a smile, telling him not to blame himself, that he's still a hero and should feel proud. This makes Meggers remember the past, when he used to drink with Lufas and a friend named Aliot. Laughing, they dreamed of creating a country for the elves and conquering the world so that no one would fear the demons. Remembering that, Meggers smiles again and thanks Lufas for her words. Outside the castle, Lufas heals Levia, and the elf thanks her. Although Ares doesn't apologize for having betrayed her, Meggers asks what they will do now, and Lufas says they will go in search of the 12 stars. The next stop will be the tomb of the Monarch of Black Wings, where Libra, the scale that has protected that place for centuries, is located. Meggers explains that many have tried to enter to steal Lufas's legendary weapons, since most were lost in the war against the Demon King. Before leaving, Meggers gives Lufas a new outfit that makes her wings invisible, wishing her a safe journey. As they say goodbye, Gans sees her one last time, noticing how beautiful she is. The protagonist tells him that she wanted to say goodbye before leaving, and thank him for his help. They also clarify that Ares is a man, so I was wrong for most of the video. Anyway, as they were leaving, Gans also suspects that she's Lufas, but doesn't think much of it. Anyway, moving on, we see the mysterious silhouette of a maid watching them from afar. In any case, if you made it to the end of the video, see you next time.